Welcome to the So You're Ready to Date podcast. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Angie. And here's where we talk about all things dating, love, and relationships. And most importantly, having fun.
Join us for practical advice for dating successfully on your terms.
Welcome aboard
and enjoy the ride. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of So You're Ready to Date, the podcast. And this time, we had a discussion as we were trying to figure out topics for season 5. And at one point we're like, we just need to lean into the fact that we are two heterosexual women talking to probably other heterosexual women. And so we want to talk about a topic that feels a little buzzwordy. And you probably maybe have some preconceived ideas about it, but we want to talk about how can we be and embody more of our feminine energy. Not that masculine energy is bad. This is not a good, bad thing, but is how can we maybe as women, because this is probably going to be a more female focused episode, embody and embrace our feminine energy, not only for ourselves, but maybe within our relationships. And again, this is not like a one size fits all. We're not trying to say this is how you have to be feminine. This is not about male, female necessarily. This is about embodying a particular type of energy, because you can also embody masculine energy as a man or a woman or however you identify. This is just how we approach life and how we approach relationships in a lot of ways, whether they're romantic, platonic, or family. So buckle up. We're going to see how this goes. We're both a little bit nervous and apprehensive because, listen, this is a big topic. Everybody has an idea and opinion on it. So we are going to talk our best about how to embrace being in your feminine energy more and how that might kind of relate and show up in your relationships.
Yes, and I love that. I think that's great. I'm super excited to talk about this. And I think one of the reasons that I am excited to talk about this is because I think more distinction in my life would be necessary. And this is an area that I could personally stand to use more education and more work on. Now, talking about masculine and feminine energy, how both male and female, we have both. We sit in both energies, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are male or female or anything like that, but it just means the way that we approach things and where that energy is coming from. And so I think it's important to maybe define what masculine energy and what feminine energy can look like when we're talking about that, because I also think personally that a lot of women have started embodying more masculine energy in the corporate environment as we're working to get to those senior level positions, as we're working our way up that corporate ladder. Going into that corporate environment has helped us, or has caused us, forced us, helped us to embody more of that masculine energy. And sometimes it can be a challenging shift to step back into that feminine energy. And I think me personally, I know that occasionally I just need that in my life.
Right. A lot of people associate the masculine energy with that doing energy. If you're like an entrepreneur, you're probably well familiar with the fact that you very rarely get a break from it because it's usually all on your shoulders. So when you're very goal focused and goal oriented, and I need to do this, and this is the linear way of doing it, it's a very almost exact kind of energy to be in. It's very much a doing energy because this is what gets us forward. This is what gets us to our goals. This is what helps me, get that promotion, to land that big account, is that masculine energy of being, doing, and just going out there and, I don't want to say attacking it, but just being that force of nature to get yourself to where your goals are. Like we said, we need that, but how do we find the balance to that feminine energy, which usually you want to say the opposite, but it's a softer energy. It's about flow. It's about creativity. It's about getting out in nature. It's about emotions and feelings, something that feels like the antithesis to your masculine energy. But how do we find the way to, maybe it's not balance. Maybe it's, you want to be 70% more feminine energy, 30% more masculine energy. It's finding that equilibrium that works for you. And it doesn't have to be 50-50. We should probably just say that right off the top, is that trying to be like equally in each is never probably going to give you what you want. You need to figure out how that balance works for you. So like for myself, because I do own my own business, I'm probably closer to like 40% masculine energy and about 60% feminine energy, because that feminine is just at this point who I am. It's almost like a character trait where it's like, no, I've gotten, and it's been practice and it's been hard and it's been learning, and it's about sometimes surrender and learning to receive. And so the nature of the work that I do, the feminine energy needs to be there because it needs to be a nurturing environment. So my balance is not always even. And sometimes you have to be more masculine and less feminine, but finding out how that flow can work in your life so that you're getting the goals that you need to get done, but you're also having that other side, which lets you create and lets you relax and lets you flow in a way that the masculine energy doesn't always let you do.
And I think those healing words, I think of heart-centered and nurturing and compassion and forgiveness and feelings. Feelings are definitely when you're sitting in the feminine energy, and we've all got feelings and it's okay to have feelings. But I was just having a light bulb moment before this, that there are people and places in my life where feeling words are uncomfortable words to even speak out loud, let alone to express that I'm having those feelings, but just to use the words feels uncomfortable. And that would be the difference between, for me, that would be one of the places where I want to embrace more of that feminine energy versus the masculine energy that I pretty much continually sit in around those certain people in my life.
Well, I was telling you before we started recording, my boyfriend and I were having a conversation this morning, and it was a heavy topic. And he was talking about something that was kind of emotional for him. And because I'm so attuned to this, I saw this very physical shift in his body. And I put my hands on the side of his head and I'm like, stop. There's a feeling here. You don't have to name it. You don't really have to, but give yourself a moment, because he was just going to brush right on by and get right back to that masculine energy, because he's fabulous in that. I mean, he just embodies that problem solver. It's his engineer brain, I think. And so there are times now that I literally will just stop him. I'm like, we don't have to necessarily talk about your feeling, but you have to acknowledge that there was a feeling there, and to breathe, and we can move on. And he's getting more comfortable, I think, talking about like feeling things, but that's where my feminine energy in our relationship shines, is because I've spent so much time being attuned to myself and how I kind of feel things, that I'm better able to see it in other people. Obviously, it's always easier in others than in ourselves naturally, but some of it is about me creating this space where he feels like it's okay to have these feelings and the emotions, because for a lot of men, it's not safe, whether they're in their friend groups, in their families, sometimes even in their relationships, to be able to have an expression of a feeling that's not, happy, angry, or maybe sad if somebody's died or something their sports team has lost. So for me, it's been about creating this safe place where emotions are okay, emotions are welcome. We'll work to talk about them, but it's very much a side of you that I need to see and that I want to see, and helping people realize that it's okay to experience both.
And that is a really good way to support your partner when you're in that healthy relationship, is to stop and nurture that and allow them to express their emotions, encourage them to express those emotions, is one way that you can get into that feminine energy when you're in the middle of a conversation, or even spending time expressing your emotions, using those words, taking the time to stop and process what you're feeling.
The amount of times that I've cried in front of this man in the short time of our relationship, I think, and I told him very early on, I'm like, just so that you're aware that I'm going to cry, I'm going to be emotional, and I'm not afraid of my feelings. If that's something that is going to be an issue for you, then we can cut this out now. But I've gotten past this point where I'm not going to let my feelings be a part of who I am, because I worked too dang hard to get out of like I'm happy, sad, angry, those like base emotions, to be able to really fully be able to express what I'm thinking and feeling, and releasing some of this shame. Because I think there's a big component of shame to like, especially men wanting to be in feminine energy because it's girly and it's not masculine. And to work around some of that too, to create this space where both parties feel like, okay, doesn't have to go anywhere but farther than this, but we need to have this space where we're free to feel and express the emotions that are coming up.
And I talking about that, shame is such a destructive feeling. And if you listen to Brene Brown, I think is where this definition comes from, but she talks about the difference between guilt and shame, whereas guilt is I did something bad and shame is I am bad. And so when you're talking about feeling shame about having emotions, providing that safe space, even if somebody doesn't open up the first time you provide that safe space, is really a powerful thing to let that shame go.
Yes, I think that'll block everything faster than anything that just, and that nice, wonderful, like guilt shame combo that I'm sure like 99% of us have. And especially if you've had some sort of religious background, sometimes that plays an extra role in that. But we want to also kind of talk about, well, how can we embody this feminine energy a little bit more? And, like in all things that we have talked about on the podcast, it involves some practice. So maybe it's a matter of doing a little bit of research for yourself on like what feminine energy traits, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that you want to excuse me, bring more into your life. Do you want to be a little bit more creative? Do you want to be more in touch with your feelings? Do you want to learn to go with the flow a little bit more? But taking some time, and I think journaling is a great way to kind of help you process, what does feminine energy mean to you? Because it means something very specific to me, but that definition does not translate to everybody else, because your life circumstances may not want those particular things, or may just not be something that you're necessarily interested in.
Yes. And understanding what that feminine energy is and understanding what that masculine energy is can be the first step in really just understanding whether or not you're in alignment with where you need to be. And that shift can change. One day it can be 70-30, and the next day it can be 50-50, and then the next day it can be 60-40 or 30-70. It can shift day to day, but really understanding and having a conscious understanding of what that masculine doer energy looks like compared to that softer feminine energy can be a really good starting point. And it can open up lines of communication too. That's the difference between having a conversation and jumping in and fixing a problem, or having a conversation and just being an ear for somebody.
Yes, because that's something that I've had to practice because and it's I know it's very definitely my masculine energy, because it's the coach in me that comes out when somebody starts talking about something that they're going through. And I have had to very consciously learn to stop myself and be like, are you looking for advice, or are you just looking for an ear? Because those are two very different energies as well. If you're looking for advice, then I will stay in this masculine energy and we will problem solve this until we've got it done. If you just need a sympathetic ear, then let me get in my feminine energy and just let you vent for 20 minutes if that's what you need. But and it's about intentionality, right? It's about being present in the moment and not trying to think about what you're going to say next, not worrying about what's going on. It's being present in the moment and being like, okay, what does this situation require of me? Do I need to be in my do or beer problem solver mode, or is this more where I just need to kind of sit back, be in the feelings, and encourage somebody else to be in their feelings as well?
Don't be afraid to ask for what you need when it comes to those conversations. I have several people in my life that will call me or I'll call them. And the first thing is, I don't need you to fix it. I already know what to do. I just need to talk about it. And both of us, I have one in particular that we talk daily. And when we're not looking for the other person to fix the problem or provide advice, that is the first thing that we both say to each other. And it's okay to ask for what you need in any conversation that you're having, whether that is with a friend or with a partner.
Yes. So I would say if you're looking to maybe embody more of that feminine energy, one thing that has worked for me is to pick a song that really feels like feminine energy to you. And then playing that maybe on repeat, or it's a cozy sweater or a specific cup of tea, but giving yourself like real tangible signals to your brain, being like, okay, we're switching gears here. And it'll take being conscious about being in that specific energy until you kind of find that way to float and flit in between the two. And maybe you never will. I mean, it may always be this very intentional, I need to do this now. So I need to put on this particular hat and do this thing. And now I can take it off and do that. So that can be a really great way of finding that transition point of being, okay, I'm ready to switch gears. This gives me 3 minutes if it's a song to kind of find that space, find that feeling, so that maybe that I can go into this next project or into a phone call or into a conversation with a friend. And it helps your brain and your body start to recognize when that shift is happening or needs to happen or wants to happen.
And what that even means to you when that shift happens. Does that mean that you're going to do something creative and you're embracing your feminine energy to be creative? Does it mean that you're embracing your feminine energy to be around your partner? Does it mean that you're embracing feminine energy to play with your and nurture your kids? Like what does it actually mean? And really, why are you stepping into it and being, again, we're going to go back to this word, intentional, and just being intentional with what you're doing so that you learn to recognize, and that switch, even if it is always intentional, becomes simpler.
So I'm going to give an example because this is something that I do very consistently, is that when I know my boyfriend is coming over, he usually shoots me a text. He's like heading over. I know that I have like roughly 20-25 minutes. And so I actually have like a yin yoga. This is a yoga teacher in me routine that I do. I turn on some the music changes, but I turn on some very different specific music and I sit back on my yoga mat and I have like a series of stretches that I move through. And it's usually a way for me to stop thinking about work. It's a way for me to get into my body, which is always super important to me. So, because I'm trying to really have that brain body connection, and it gets me in a more relaxed state and a more relaxed frame of mind so that when he comes over, I am very intentional. I'm like, all right, we have switched gears. I've moved my body. I'm feeling pretty good. I can be in that space of being that feminine energy for him because he definitely needs that. Usually, if he's coming over, especially when he comes over after work.
Yes, because a lot of times in the workspace, male or female, we are goal driven for a purpose. You're there to accomplish a task. You're there to do very specific things. Most likely, in most types of professions, when you are at work, you are much more in your masculine energy than in your feminine energy. So that makes sense. Like after a long day at work to switch gears, or when your partner is coming over, coming home after that, needing to or wanting to have that balance of masculine and feminine energy in a relationship, and taking that moment or two to switch gears and put yourself in that frame of mind that you want to be in.
Because then I take charge in a very weird way, right? So which taking charge feels kind of masculine, but it's almost like, all right, you're here. I'm nice and relaxed and ready to go. So now I can be in charge of taking care of you and letting you relax and kind of slip out of that space. But that's where that kind of like yin yang for us comes into play, because I can help and do all that. And then all of a sudden I'll ask him this question and he's like, yeah, let me send you like 3 links to these websites that I think are going to be helpful for whatever problem it's going to be. So it's learning to find that balance also within your relationship, so that you don't necessarily want too much of one or too much of the other. And again, it's going to be off balance multiple times throughout there, but it's again trying to figure out how can we regulate within each other and with each other so that we're providing, I don't know, I almost said like the best experience, but it kind of is the best experience of whatever you're doing with your partner in that particular moment, so that hopefully both of you walk away, whether it's more relaxed or more invigorated or however it is, being intentional in those moments so that both of you get what you need from your interaction.
And feel fulfilled, walked away feeling fulfilled. Yes. But there are so many different ways that you can intentionally embrace and stand in your feminine energy. And we want to hear what your favorites are and what you do and how you set yourself up to embrace and stand in your feminine energy. So drop us a line at soyou'readytodate@gmail.com. We would love to hear all of your stories, what worked, maybe what didn't work. We definitely like to hear both sides of that. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all of the channels, and we will be back next week with another great topic.